This podcast is certified fresh. Freshmediaworks.com.
Looking to boost your company's marketing? Look no further than Fresh MediaWorks. Podcasting is the best way to promote your brand and increase your customer base. You can create your own show, be a guest on other podcasts, or advertise on existing podcasts to reach a valuable audience. Don't wait. Start elevating your marketing game today with Fresh MediaWorks. Call now, 713-269-4620, or find us online at freshmediaworks.com/podcasting.
Hello and welcome everyone to another insightful episode of MasterCoaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz. I'm Bob Bertucci, joined here with fellow Master Coaches Mick Haley, Tom Hibert, and Jim Stone. Our topic today is trends in the game outside of the X's and O's, though we'll probably talk a little bit about the X's and O's as well. And our guest for today is none other than head women's volleyball coach at USC, Brad Keller. Let's welcome Brad Keller.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good, Brad. How are you?
Doing well. It's nice to have be in the off season and not in the daily grind of season. So I'm enjoying that part of it, as you guys all are very aware of that stuff.
Well, talking about the grind of the season, we're going to kick off the show with our resident expert, Jim Stone. He's going to ask you a little bit about the grinds that are facing you coming up. So, Jim, why don't you take it?
Well, this whole grind of the season thing, I mean, there is no off season anymore on many levels. But, Brad, thanks for coming on and taking time from your schedule to help us out here. The kind of the topic area that I'd like to focus on, and I have a bunch of questions relative to USC going into the Big Ten in all sports, and certainly volleyball in particular. And I'm especially curious about just the whole logistics of the change in conferences and how that's going to look, and how you're going to travel, and how many times you're going to travel to compete back in the Midwest or East Coast. If you can enlighten some of the viewers in terms of kind of the progress that's been made, both inside of USC, but also with the Big Ten, relative to what your fall schedule and travel schedule and that type of thing might look like as you look towards the fall.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts right now with that, as we all know. The actual schedule will not come out probably, I don't know, probably in June or something like that. We have to wait for football and some of the other parameters to see kind of what that looks like. And it's going to be delicate. The Big Ten is a fantastic organization. They are really on top of it. And I just got back from a Big Ten head coaches meeting. I felt very comfortable. I looked at Matt Ulmer from Oregon. I was like, man, they're really on top of this. And I love that. I love the fact that we can kind of go into this knowing that there's going to be a lot of work done to make sure that we're going to do the best job possible for everybody to have the best experience. And, TV talks, and there's a lot of things that are going on with the Big Ten that matter. And so there's going to be some adjustments here and there. I would say that we're going to travel probably 4 times back east, maybe Midwest, but it's not just going to be the East Coast. So there's going to be some room there. You are going against, some timelines, right? And so are some time zones, and there's going to be some adjustments there. The Big Ten does have midweek games on Wednesday. My guess is we'll be playing UCLA, Oregon, Washington during those times, which would be great. But overall, I would say I'm personally really excited about this. I mean, I love this conference that we're going into. It's some of the best volleyball around. I mean, it's powerhouse program after powerhouse program, and they're all very professional, and they handle themselves in a great way. And I'm truly just excited about and seeing, how it's going to go. Now, if you guys call me in December, we may have a different conversation. I might be pretty tired, but like, I mean, right now it's pretty exciting and it's new, shall we say.
Well, just as a follow-up, Brad, I mean, when these big moves are made, many times the coaches aren't consulted and certainly the student athletes aren't consulted with how they feel about these moves. But focusing on the student athlete just for a second, I mean, speaking of grinding, that's going to be a real grind for them in terms of missed class time, certainly travel and social life and that type of thing. Can you kind of talk with us about in terms of what your mode of travel is going to be? I mean, are you flying commercial? Are you chartering? Are there going to be tutors going along? One thing, this will start turning into a long question. One of the NFL teams, they played on the East Coast on Sunday night, and the decision was made to stay over and not, charter back on that night. They thought it was harder on the players to do a red eye versus waiting to the next day and then going back. So, what kind of arrangements are being made to make this move to the Big Ten as painless as possible for the student athlete, understanding that's going to be challenging anyway?
Well, there's a lot to that question, right? And there's a lot of intention, research, talking points. We're definitely on this. And I can answer a lot of these things, actually. So I would say everything and anything is going to be brought to the table and seeing what's possible and what's not, and what's going to be best for the student athlete. And I'm going to go all over the place, but I promise I'll bring it back. I mean, we were in the Big Ten meeting, and Steve Aird was talking about the frustration of a team from the East Coast flying west and playing, which I didn't even think about, whereas it's a 7 o'clock game our time, but it's like a 10 o'clock game for them. And so it's going to be stress both ways for everybody. That's just how this is going to be. And so when you break that stuff down, you're going to have to make sure, it comes down to even making sure Wi-Fi is available so people can do homework on the flight. Do we get them pillows so they can sleep on the flight? We talk to people about sleeping patterns and how that looks. Are we going to charter here, but maybe commercial there? Charter is not always the best answer. Now it's great, but chartering to Penn State makes sense. But maybe chartering to Northwestern doesn't make sense. Maybe that's a direct flight to Chicago O'Hare, and maybe the travel partner is Northwestern in Illinois. So we play, let's say Friday night against Northwestern, we commercial, we bus to Illinois, and then we charter back from Illinois. So there's a lot of combinations that can occur or that are on the table that may make more sense. And every single conversation is started with how we are going to put the best interest of the student athlete first, and coaches too, by the way. We have feelings too, just so you guys know. But just, there's a lot to this, and it's not going to be really simple. I think there's going to be a little bit of trial and error with all of this. I will say this, that last year we went out to Purdue, and we flew into Indianapolis, I think, and then drove to Lafayette. Is that where they are? I can't remember. I think it's Lafayette. And we played Illinois on a Friday, and then we played Illinois on a Thursday, and then we played Purdue on a Friday. But the game was at 8 p.m. because they wanted to put on the Big Ten. It went 4, and we weren't out of their gym until probably midnight. And then we had to bus from Lafayette, which is an hour and a half or 2 hours, back to Indianapolis. So we're at 1:30, 2 o'clock, check into the hotel, and then we had to get on a flight to the next morning at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning to go to Denver, connect at Denver, and then get back home to LA. And the reason why that was important information was if we were able to charter there, we could have flown out that night and saved a day and gotten our kids back. And that would have helped them academically or rest up or whatever it is. This is always going to be about time. And so if we can mitigate that or help in those fields, I think that's kind of what the push is going to be. And then making sure if we're playing on a Wednesday night, we're not flying out to Ohio State to play Ohio State on a Wednesday night. that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me personally. So all these things are getting brought up. All these things are being talked about. Resources are being provided. Big Ten is helping. So it's right now, that's kind of where we are with all of it. But it is being talked about quite a bit, I would say.
Okay, I got one more grand question that is like a three-headed hydra here. Has there been any discussions about the Big Ten going to a postseason tournament? That's the first head of the hydra. Is the Big Ten that at quite a few schools in the Big Ten, they're drawing big numbers. And if it's my understanding, the Big Ten network is drawing big numbers. So TV is a big part of this, and how that's impacting the schools, and specifically USC relative to their exposure on both the Big Ten network and volleyball world. And kind of the culminating question is the conference off, like you said, you just got through with Big Ten meetings. Are they perceiving volleyball as a revenue producer? So all these things, I think, are kind of tied together in terms of tournament, television, and then the overarching, we can make money, or volleyball can make money through these various sources. Do you have any information that the viewers might be interested in relative to those items?
Yes and no. So kind of, but not really, Jim. So just because I'm new, the Big Ten does believe, and they are making money in our sport, and they are very, very much invested in women's volleyball, which is fantastic, right? That's a great thing. And TV is going to be a big driving force of this, I'm sure. Just as much TV as we can get, the better. And they have plans in place for that. Talks have been had about a Big Ten tournament in the middle of the season and at the end of the season. Right now, that's not what's going to happen, I don't think. Again, being new, you're just kind of you're in the room and you're learning a lot about kind of the new way of how things are going to go. And I think they're figuring out, and they're trying, but they bring everything to the table. Remember, though, that we have now 18 teams, right? 18 teams in the Big Ten. So you're playing everybody once, and then you're playing the ones in your pod, which is for us, Oregon, Washington, UCLA twice. And so how many matches are you really trying to cram in there? And then for me, and I will only answer for myself because I don't know how the rest of the coaches feel about this, is I don't know that I want personally a Big Ten conference tournament. It's going to be a long enough season as is. And if we're getting into the NCAA tournament, I don't know if I want to go in there all broken down or beat up. I'd rather go in there playing our highest level of ball, not burn out, and reduce the injuries or what that looks like. I don't know enough about that, but that's my initial thought, because there's plenty of opportunity where we're going to beat up on each other. This is a really, really big and good conference.
Fair enough. I'm
sure you have some questions here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to hand this off to Mick.
Well, I'll be glad to jump in there. I would like to finish that to ask you, are all the best teams in the Midwest in one pod?
I haven't paid attention which pods are which, actually. I've not even paid attention to it until the schedule comes out. So.
I would know if Purdue, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Penn State were all in one pod.
That would be a pretty good pod, right?
Well, it would be great for RPI, right?
Yes, that would be the case. Yeah.
And is that information available somewhere?
I don't know yet. We have meetings coming up the next couple of weeks. I'll know more as we go through it. I know that one pod is going to be us, Washington, UCLA, and Oregon. I can tell you that. So I think it's going to be more regionally based, like what you're hinting at. And we're going to go through this round. I think we're going through in a couple of years of this just to see kind of what this looks like. And then come back, reassess, and see what's the best for not only the conference, but honestly, the top teams that can make runs at the Final Four and the national championship. It's a little bit of both.
The word on the street, though, is that you guys are going to have a tournament in 25.
There is.
That's not true.
Yeah, there is. But I've not been told that's finalized or whatever, but that has been put on the table, yes.
Okay, I'll move forward then. Stoney has had some good questions for you and certainly some stuff to think about. The playing the teams on the West Coast twice is interesting. Just to say, if you only played them once and had a tournament, you wouldn't increase your number of games, but one or two probably.
Correct.
And it probably gives, since the Big Ten was not strong this year at the top end of going into the tournament, they had 3, possibly 4 teams only, and could have ended up with 4 instead of 5, I believe. Yeah. If you think about it, with 18 teams only getting 4 or 5 teams in, that would not be good. And the SEC seems to have found an answer to that because they get 8 or 9 in. They're going to a tournament in 2025, is my understanding. Mm-hmm. And they have, 16 teams now with Vanderbilt coming in 25, 16? I think.
16, yeah, I think 16. Yep.
So it's an interesting thing what's happening in this power. So let's talk about the power divisions. I mean, we're talking about the top, maybe 56 of the top 60 teams in 4 conferences, basically. And there's been some weird things going on. I mean, whoever heard of the head football coach at UCLA going as a defensive coordinator to Ohio State? I mean, in my time in the Big 12, that would never have been heard of, and somebody would probably put out a contract on whoever did something like that.
Yeah.
We have Tyler Hildebrand, who was head coach for 2 years at Long Beach, gives up the head coach's position just down the road to come and work with you guys as an assistant. We could, whatever his title is, but basically you're running the show. So do we have a trend going on here of, one, people wanting to be in this top group of 60 teams? And are they willing to sacrifice positions to get in? Or 2, one might speculate that athletic directors, the way they've been resigning, they're over 100 now in the last 2 or 2.5 years, over 100 athletic directors resigning or getting drop kicked. That's amazing. And who fills those positions? But tell me what you think about this and if it is a trend, and then maybe speculate on if this is a good thing. And then I have a second question I'll get to once you respond.
I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I do think, and I will let, and Tyler, this is Tyler's story, and I'll let Tyler talk about it. I can give you a little bit, but, I think that Tyler is one of the elite minds in our industry, in my opinion. I think he's one of the better coaches out there. His resume speaks for itself of not only as a player, but, coaching at the highest levels and being able to put together. I mean, he and Alan Knipe and McCray, they put that Long Beach State men's team together that battled us, in the national championship. And they won 2 championships. He went to Nebraska and won. He's been a runner-up with Nebraska. He head coach for 2 years at Long Beach State. He was a part of the beach. He was head of the beach team, the beach programs, and went to the Olympics and medal. I mean, so he's got a long list of accomplishments of what he's done and what he brings to the table. And to have him be a part of this is awesome. I mean, it's amazing. It's awesome. And we're having a great time, and we're very grateful to have him here. The trend of like what you're talking about, I don't know if it's what Tyler's doing or not. I have to talk to him more about it, but I think it's not the haves and have-nots, but trying to be in the arena. It's hard with the shift in landscape, which is what we're kind of talking about right now. Is you have NIL, you have transfer portal, like this. The world of volleyball is so different now. Like this is not what I grew up training to become. I feel like I'm a CEO or a manager now. I'm not even a coach anymore. I feel like I'm a manager.
Certainly.
And but that's not that's not what I prepared for. So I'm learning how to do this in real time. And so that's a whole nother thing where why you see some of these coaches, again, I can't speak for Tyler, but like maybe a Chip Keller where it's like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I just want to coach football. I want to be a part of this I'm going to go to a program that's going to be in the top 4 or 5 and compete for this because that's how I'm built and that's what I want to do. And my mind works for that. I mean, Chip Kelly's known to be this innovator or creator, for example. And so I always talk about it as you either want to be in the arena or you don't want to be in the arena. And so if these are opportunities for these individuals to be in the arena and that's what makes sense to them, then I think that that's the trend that you're seeing. That's where we're going. Now, that doesn't mean mid-majors can't make it or anything else like that. I just, it's just harder with resources, it seems like. And there's just this big push or divide with it. I don't love the NIL. I don't love the transfer portal. And I use both. But doesn't mean you have to like it. So, I don't know. I don't know that I really answered that, Mick. There's a lot there,
Okay, well, let's have some fun with it then.
I'm in. Hey, I'm in.
You always like to have fun, and I'm always pushing the envelope, so it's we can have a little fun with this.
Oh boy,
yeah. Well, so we got this trend. I think you pointed out it could be a trend, and we got a situation where you used to be a rookie, but you're not a rookie anymore. You went through COVID. You had to do that as a rookie. Then you come out. You get hit with. You were a rookie with that. Now you're not a rookie anymore. You're pretty much an experienced veteran. Now speculate with me about my former assistant, Tim Nolan, who's leading Grand Canyon, doing a great job, first or second every year in the conference. Got a great life in Phoenix there, can play golf, and he goes and takes the Northwestern job, which is some feel close to death. Getting that program up and competing in all sports, really. They've had some problems up there trying to do that. Their facilities are great, but they're in Chicago. And so let's speculate a little bit. Tell me what you think Nolan is thinking right now. What does he run into? Just as a rookie going in there, just list off the things that he probably hasn't experienced because of the intensity and the aggressiveness of the Big Ten and where the conference is going.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Tim a lot, so I actually know a lot about this process, just so you know. and I told him, and he can speak for himself on that one as well. And he can say, but I told him, you're an idiot if you don't take this job. So I pushed him to go to Northwestern. And here's my reason why. It's a Power 4 program. It's a really high academic institution. It's not in a good space right now. That doesn't mean it can't be in a good space. And sometimes you got to bet on yourself. And Tim's really good. You know this. He can recruit. And the number one pipeline thing you got to do is you got to be able to recruit. And that dude can recruit. So he's going to get in there, and he knows it. He worked for you here. He's been through this. He knows how to do that job. He seems to be able to grind through that. Like, things don't phase him as much as others, it looks like. I mean, and I think that, again, he wanted to be in the arena, and Grand Canyon to Northwestern. It's possibly it's a step, right? And so you either are going to take a chance and go for it or not. And like John Sproul told me a long time ago, like, you can always take a job, a big job. Like for me, it was here at USC. You get fired in 4 or 5 years. You're going to get picked up. But you got to take chances. You got to roll the dice and go after some of this stuff. If you sit there and you do the same thing over and over again, you're right. I mean, he can play golf all the time, but I don't think he's a good golfer. I'm calling him out on that. So like, what do you like? You're gonna play golf and you're not. I mean, you're an okay golfer or something. I don't know. Not really. You're in the desert all the time. I mean, like, that's not how Tim. To me, Tim is a go-getter, and he wants that.
Okay, so you've mentioned one thing, recruiting. He's good at that. But what about what other things is he going to get hit with? Is he going to get hit with a massive travel situation? Yeah. Is he going to be dealing with a different kind of student athlete? What are the problems you foresee?
Yeah, I mean, a high academic kid is going to be different than a low academic kid or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's what it was at GCU, but I'm just saying it's different, right? I mean, Northwestern is up there with like Virginia and Cal and Stanford and like the Ivy Leagues, like those are, and when you get up there, that shrinks your pool of players you're going after because of the parameters. So there's going to be some challenge there. There's always going to be challenge there. But Mick, I mean, as much as travel, yeah, but you're right in the middle of it. So your travel is never going to be like a 5-hour trip. It's going to be a 3 or 4 hour trip, but you're never going the 5-hour trip. So you're in the middle of it. You're in the middle of the major city. You're on the water. Your facilities are great. I feel like I'm pumping up Northwestern right now. But anyways, like it's just Tim, you're welcome. Tim, you're welcome. We're helping you recruit right now. No, but I think there's a lot of positive there that he can work from to get the people it all comes down to getting the people around him going in the right direction, right? His staff, whatever that looks like. Travel, we're gonna learn. We're gonna learn as we go. Like no one knows what this is. We have guesses and we can try to do the best we can, but that's going to be everyone's going to deal with that.
It just doesn't seem like anybody's patient anymore.
No one's patient.
It has to be done yesterday.
Yeah, no one's patient.
So I think you've hit the points. I'm gonna, Tom Hibert is just absolutely drooling to get after you here. Tom, go ahead. Brad's all yours.
Well, I want to talk to you about the portal in a second, Brad, but I do want to ask a question about this logistical stuff because you're talking about how they're going to manage all this. And I know even in the Mountain West Conference in men's basketball, you have some haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
In the Big Ten, are there any have-nots? Are there any people who do not have the resources to jump in and manage volleyball at the level that you're talking about?
I don't know that. I don't know what Nebraska has compared to like Michigan to Rutgers to us to Oregon. I don't know. I've had conversations with coaches about various things, and so there's hints here and there, but everyone's going to have a different dilemma. I think like for us, it's going to be we have a major. The good news for us and UCLA is that we have LAX, and LAX can get to a lot of places a little bit easier, whereas maybe another school has to go through a smaller airport and then hit a major airport and then go if they're not chartering. I don't know. And they haven't revealed that to me up to this point. So I do think, though, there are always going to be have and have-nots. No matter what conference it is, like you can't tell me Alabama football and Georgia football is or versus, I don't know. I mean, someone else in their conference Ole Miss, I guess, is I don't know. It's all different. And it depends on what that university wants to do and how much time, energy, patience, resources they're willing to put into, their sport that they feel. I mean, clearly like Gonzaga really cares about men's and women's basketball, right? I mean, you can see that. So you just go through these. It's going to be different for every single university or entity or program.
All right. So, and you started to touch on recruiting, and you mentioned a little bit about the portal, and we're all retired here, but we still look and know things are different. You know what I mean? And I think you're now in the biggest conference in the country and one of the biggest ones impacted by portal.
Yep.
What are you thinking philosophically about how you are going to use the portal? What's the role? Because this whole COVID thing that gave extra years of eligibility, all that stuff's washing out now. What's the Big Ten going to look like when it comes to transfer portal recruiting?
Oh man, I promised Mick I would be authentic here. This is where I get in trouble. I want to make this very, very clear, guys. I hate the transfer portal. I hate it, and I want to make this clear also. I use it. We've had 10 transfers coming in. Like, we're a big user of the transfer portal. So I don't want to be a hypocrite here. We use it because we need to. We need to in order to keep up and to be able to compete at the highest level and to fill the needs that you have or whatever. But for me, I'm an old soul, and I will answer your question, Tom, I promise. But the old days to me are kind of been, and again, it's me personally, I tarnished a little bit. Now, if you're a kid that's in a bad scenario, it's unhealthy, coach gets fired. Like, there's certain things where you should be able to transfer, and there's no problem with that. But we're kind of in this age where when a kid doesn't get their way, they just leave. And so what are we teaching as a society? We're not helping that kid get ready for the real world. You don't just, you can leave and go get another job. But if you're not going to be able to get tough or get in the trenches or work through issues, how are you going to be as a spouse, a leader, a work employee? Like, I think that stuff matters. And I believe those lines have been blended too much. And so we've opened Pandora's box, and away we go with this. Now, you're a grad transfer, like the COVID year. You want some new experience. Great. There are always ways to make sure that this is a positive thing too. I don't want to be just a Debbie Downer and it's like, this is it. But I don't like it. I grew up where you recruit a kid for 2 or 3 years, their summer of their junior year. And so that's 2 years of relationship building there. And then you have them for 4 or 5 years. Well, that's like, you're talking about 7, 8, 9 years of building a relationship that maybe sometime down the road, you're going to be invited to their wedding, or that you make really good friendships. Like, all of you have players that you've coached that have reached out, and they're really important to you in your life, and you're important to them. I think this kind of takes this away a little bit. So anyways, that was that. Tom, what was the question again? I'm sorry. Sorry.
I guess give me an idea of, if you look across the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I'll make it simple. What percentage of players joining rosters do you think are going to be transfer portal?
Ooh, that's a good question. I still think it's like 10, 20%. I mean, obviously Texas made some really good moves, right? They really beefed up their roster for the last 2 years in a row. I think they've done a really nice job. I think Nebraska does that, and Penn State, those are the ones that come to mind. I think Florida does that.
Wisconsin did a nice job.
Wisconsin, that's right. Wisconsin did that. Absolutely. I think we're in the mix a little bit with that stuff. Some schools can't, or it's really difficult for them to get transfers in. But yeah, I think 10, 20% of your roster, maybe, right? If you're getting up to 3 or 4, then 5, 10%, I guess, not 20%, but they're usually impact players, right? They're coming in, and they're going to be a big part of your program. Like, you're not going out. I mean, the schools I mentioned are not going to bring someone just to come hang out and be a backup. That's, usually that's not what it is, unless they're in a pinch or something like that. They're going to get playmakers or people that can make a difference on the court for them. So
the follow-up to that is, has the transfer portal hurt you at any point? And also, does the fact that the transfer portal exists make you treat your current players differently?
Well, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, it's been terrible for me, but that's all right. Going through that stuff. I'd like to have a vacation. I'd like to actually have a life. And I think it's taken away because I think Jim said it a while ago before we got on, is there's no off time anymore. And so when do you get a chance to actually downshift or live your real true life, and how does that look? And that's a whole nother topic, but it's helped us. I think we have a young lady coming that's going to help us right away. You can't tell me Skylar Fields didn't impact us or help us. I think these are really big ordeals. And so it really helped our program out, because again, Mick alluded to it, that I took over during COVID, and I couldn't be around my team. It was all Zoom. And so you're trying to build culture through that. So what can control? You just recruit. And by the way, that was a weird time for recruiting, because you're not actually they're not coming on campus. You're not around camp. You're not actually having official visits. They're just committing via Zoom or phone calls. And that was a weird one. So we had like a good recruiting class, but they weren't going to be here for a couple of years. And so we had to fill the roster through transfers and needs to survive and do the best we can. And I thought we did a good job of that. And then we just had a couple injuries that got in the way. But now I think that we've built up enough recruiting classes where our 24s and 25s and where we're going is getting really, really solid, really good. And so now I think the transfer portal is going to be a little bit different for us. But the portal was really important. It's always important. And if you can grab or get a kid in there that's going to help your program or help bridge a gap or whatever you need, you're a fool not to invest in that and go through it. You just got to make sure. And by the way, that's different, right? They're older. You're not talking to a 15 or 16-year-old. A 20-year-old or a 19, 20, 21-year-old is a very different individual at that point. They've been through it a little bit. Hopefully they're pretty mature, and they can really help where you're trying to get your culture or your program to. There was another question I didn't answer, Tom. I'm sorry. I go on rants, as you know.
Yeah, it was basically like, are you tiptoeing around certain issues that you might have handled more difficult, more tougher now that you are worried about players leaving? No,
I think it's actually really helped me. I've never been someone that tiptoes around things. I'm very direct. I'm very open. I'm very vulnerable about stuff. It's just how I've been raised, and you just have to have real conversations with the kids. This generation needs more conversations, and I think that that's valid, and we need to do that. So I'm completely good with those types of conversations. And listen, at a university or program at USC, we should have a lot of competition. This should be a program where you don't just you're guaranteed to be the starter and you're never going to get pulled and it's going to be okay and the world caters to you. No, that's not what this place needs to be about. My guess is 90% of the programs across the country need to be like that. So I don't think tiptoeing around it is a big deal, being direct about it. And then the last part is when you keep bringing people in and you do a good job or the best job you can of making sure they are about what the drive is, the vision, the culture, they do the things that you want them to do, that they're about it, right? It does weed out the ones that aren't there for the right reasons, but at the same time, it gives them opportunity to step up or to level up. As we say, rising tide lifts all boats type of thing. So there's a lot of really positive and meat on the bone there for that as well. And I tend to gravitate towards that.
Sorry, I had to unmute. So now I'm going to let Bob take over because I think we connected to transfer portal is also our other new trend, which is NIL. And we're curious to see how you see that in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tom. Brad, we've had 2 shows now just on NIL. How does the NIL impact USC?
It's going to impact us dramatically. I think that there are schools out there that are going to invest and dive into this, and they're going to do it. They're going to invest in the resource part of it, the education component of it, and they're going to be authentic and real and do it the right way, right? The checkpoints to make sure that it's legal or it's above you're in that zone where you need to be, because it's a shifting landscape, as you know. I mean, they just had a ruling from against NCAA. I mean, this thing is changing every single day. So the education component is going to be just as vital and important as whether you can supply or give resources to this entity. But it's going to matter. I mean, you guys know this. The social media world and the NIL landscape is changing sports, and you're either going to be invested and go after this, or you're not, and you're going to fall on the wayside. It's going to be difficult, in my opinion. So we're going to invest in this. We're going to do the best we can. I love the direction that we're going. I love how we're handling it. I love our leader that's here in place. There's a lot of conscious effort that's going towards the right things, and I truly appreciate that. I can only speak for our university, right? I can't speak for others, but you can see there's a lot of universities or programs out there that are in front of this, and they are doing a really good job, and it's benefiting their programs.
So, Brad, what is USC going to need to be competitive in the Big Ten with NIL? I mean, you must have an idea, because we actually know about some of the schools and what they're doing. I'm sure you do. What are you going to need to be competitive at USC?
That's a great question. I don't actually know that. I do have ideas, right? You need to be in the ballpark of some of these other institutions to play the game. My concern with this
is your chance to pitch it now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. But here's my concern with this. This is like we're going to be just fine when it comes to competing, but you got to be able to compete. And then it comes down, and then it shifts back to neutral of the institution, the location, the program, but you got to get into that world so that you can then have those conversations. is my guess. That's what it seems to be trending towards. All right. So that's that component of it, of what that looks like. My concern with NIL is I really want to make sure that we're not just handing the keys to a Ferrari, to a kid who does not know how to drive manual or stick shift and dropping them off in the middle of San Francisco and say, good luck. Right. That's like the analogy I want to give. It's like we're giving a lot, but what are they doing to earn it? And that goes into the influencers and all these other things that are happening on TikTok and everything. I can't believe I'm even saying this. I watched 3 people do a dance video on TikTok. Yes, I'm saying this. And they had a certain amount of views. And then I looked it up. They made $4.5 million in 1 month based off of that one video. Now that took them 2 days to do? I don't know. Like, what are we talking about? So, and that's kind of the world we're going towards, where we're just giving away a lot of this stuff. On the flip side of that is that colleges have always been able to capitalize on collegiate athletes like Johnny Manziel or all these athletes where they're making a lot of money off of these individuals, which is why we're in this space. And so what's the give and take? I just want to make sure that there's a good educational component to it, number one, and that the kid is actually there's some sort of work besides just taking one photo and like, earpods, boom, done. And then you get your money. I just don't think that's where it needs to go. But again, I'm learning as we go through this as well. I don't know. What do you think about that?
What percentage what percentage of your players are benefiting from NIL right now?
Our team has absolutely. They have a lot of opportunity for NIL. They have NIL opportunities, but some kids are not into this, which I have no idea why. When you're a kid, I feel like you're a little confused with that. But like some kids are really into this, right? And some kids are not, and it just depends on what that looks like. But there are plenty of opportunities here at USC to not only have good NIL opportunities, but networking. That's another part of this, which I like, is these are businesses or people that are coming to the table that can help connect these kids into the real world, and maybe they're into something whatever this looks like, and now they have that connection. So I like that part too.
Have you heard of TAP? We had them on our show last week. Did you
I do, because Mick told me about it. So I do know about that. I like the idea of this a little bit better. I don't know. I'm up in the air about it, but I think it's the right idea. I mean, sure. Yeah.
Well, another twist on the question is, with the different amounts of money that different players are making with NIL, how do you manage, the possible dissension that it creates on your team?
Haven't had that yet. And we're prepared for it. I think no matter what, reality is reality though, Bob. I mean, at the end of the day, the rest of the LSU women's basketball team is not going to do what Angel Reese is going to do. And Caitlin Clark is going to play another year in the NCAA, because she's probably making more money on NIL than she would be going to the WNBA. And that's what it is. And so, okay, fine. Maybe there's some resentment there. But if your team is really good, like Iowa and LSU is in women's basketball, I don't know. Would you rather be a part of that situation and get a piece of that pie, or do you want to sulk and be immature about it and not? I mean, I don't know. There's, winning is nice. Winning helps a lot of little areas that you're talking about. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be fair. It's still, if you look at it, the landscape, it's still kind of the 1% of the one. I mean, it's not the people that are making a lot of money in all these sports. It's not like the entire football team. It's like the quarterback, and then it's the running back or something, right? It's very
that was a
specific.
concept that TAP had mentioned that we thought was kind of interesting, that, that the player got 90% and the rest of the team shared in that 10%. They're all getting something. At least that was an attempt, I guess, to try to share. How about NIL in recruiting?
Say that again.
I mean, you obviously want to do it the right way. You want the kids to do some work for what they're getting, and we're all in agreement with that.
Yes,
and we think it's great that they're getting some benefit for their for their success, their name, their image, the likeness. But how about in the recruiting world? How is NIL really impacting the recruiting?
It's impacted quite a bit. There's been kids that have committed to programs, and it's because of the NIL package, and it's been told to me, directly. And so it impacts quite a bit. And it's the landscape, it's where we're going. It's just part of this process. And I think that, to make it clear, these kids deserve these opportunities. If you have the opportunity to make money and do it, the right way, we need to empower that and push that. So as much as we may not like NIL in certain ways, this is also a really good opportunity to educate these kids and make sure that we're prepping them for the real world, because that's what the real world is. We have to adapt to what the real world is becoming. And so we have to embrace this and go after it. That's part of the recruiting piece of this.
You really believe
that? A plan in place for them, and they can see kind of like how they're going to be educated or whatever it is. We still are not telling them dollar signs or whatever that looks like. We're telling them, like, we're going to invest in this, and this is what it's going to look like as far as you being able to, like, put yourself in front of these individuals, and to help you network, and it's going to help you build your personal brand, right? We're talking about personal branding, which is the new wave. So how do you make sure that you're building your brand and doing it the right way? And how are you, like, really making sure you're taking care of yourself so that when you leave college, you're not like whatever $200,000 in debt or whatever. You're staying on a better footing because you were able to make money in college. Because being a volleyball player is a full-time job now. It's not like you're out doing a job besides. Mostly you're playing volleyball. That's a full-time thing in the NCAA or whatever sport that is. So you don't have time to go out and get another job and still be academically inclined, all this other stuff. So you should be rewarded for that as best you can, legally, properly, so that when you leave and go into the real world, you are not in so much debt, let's say, number one. And number two, you're prepared and you're ready for whatever the elevator pitch is or the job opportunity or whatever that is, down the road.
Mick,
I kind of answered the question, Bob.
I was just writing a note, but honestly, Brad, from what you've said, and then this last part, I know you're going to tell me, yes, you really believe this, but I listen to Jim Harbaugh talk about this all the time with Michigan football, and I think he's just full of it up to his earlobes. And I think he's saying that because that's the way he becomes a player's coach and recruits that way. I think part of this is really detrimental to the athlete and the athlete's growth and what the athlete thinks about how they're going to maintain a life, how they're going to live in the community. Are they going to talk to their next door neighbor? And if they can't communicate, how are they going to do that? Who's going to pay them every month? Yada, yada, yada. So I just wonder, is it something you coaches have to say, or otherwise you get put on a list in the players' minds of say, I don't want to go to that school because they're not supportive of NIL opportunities,
I think it depends on the university and the resources and what they bring to the table besides. I would actually say you don't need to do that, and you're not going to get blacklisted if you do it. I think that at the end of the day, if you're doing the right, you're never wrong for doing the right thing, right? Isn't that a saying or something like that?
Yeah.
So you either believe in the values that you bring to the table and who and what you are or what that looks like. And if you skew from that, then you're kind of going down the fraudulent way, or you're just whatever that looks like. But if you've always been genuine and this is what we're about and this is who we are, and yes, but it's like to avoid it and say we're not going to be a part of NIL. I mean, that doesn't make sense either. I mean, that's a part that we need to adapt to and to adjust. But I don't think it has to be the end all be all and the only opportunity, or it doesn't need to be that. I think we still are in a landscape where we as coaches have the opportunity to show our authentic selves. This is what the program's about. Here's what we do well. Here's what we're going to work on. Here's how you know how that goes, like just what that really looks like.
Yeah.
And then be okay with, and this is where it gets rough, if they don't want to be a part of that, then maybe you don't want to be a part of that individual either, right? Maybe that is a blessing in disguise. Or maybe, again, that's where the transfer portal comes down the road, where they are going down the wrong road, and then they have realization and they come back to you later on a little bit more mature. So I just think you have to be open about this a little bit and be, like you guys said earlier, there's no patience. You have to be really patient as a manager or CEO and not an actual coach, which I'm not anymore. I'm no longer a coach. But like, I think that's would be my answer. I'm pretty passionate about that, Mick. You know, I think that I've won a lot of recruiting battles and I've lost a lot of recruiting battles, but I always walk away from those and I can sleep with my head on the pillow and I believe in what we were about, and it's either a fit or it's not. And I still believe in that. I still believe that we have that intact. At least I hope. And that's where I think the more we educate these kids and we connect with these kids, we can help get the right people in the right spots, you know, across the country. And yeah.
You know, I give a lot of lessons now that I'm not doing anything. And these kids, what the coaches are telling them, it seems to me that coaches are frantic. They're at a point where they're worried about their jobs. They're worried about getting kids in the program. They just want to get them in right now because they feel like they're going to leave, you know, the next year or 2 years, and they have to stock up. They're willing to say just about anything. And I am just aghast at what some of these coaches have said to some of these players. I don't know if they actually believe that. I would be really concerned if they believed what they were telling them. But I'm more concerned that, you know, it's put the coaches in a very precarious situation of survival. And how do you survive in this profession now?
You don't. And the reason why I'm saying that is again, like you kind of said it, you have these choices. You're either going to be your authentic self and it's going to play itself out, and you're either going to be okay with that or not, or you're going to go down a road where you're going to do whatever it takes and jeopardize your authentic self and all that other stuff. And it is what it is when it comes to that. And, you know, I've heard through the grapevine, but I don't know. And I feel bad if people feel that way or they have to go through that. That in all honesty, that's got to be miserable for the coach too, right?
Yeah,
it's not,
absolutely.
So as much as like they're saying these things, it's like, oh, a kid, or like I really feel for the coach. You know, it's hard these days. It's gotten really, really difficult to be a coach, and you've got to be so good with like who you are and what your values are and your vision, and you've got to hold true as best you can. And it's either going to work or it's not. But I know that's not the best answer for the world out there, but I just think that that's the only thing you can do.
Well, Brad, I think that's great. And we really appreciate, you know, your insights and what's going on in the game right now, and really appreciate your honesty on answering, you know, all these questions. I'm sure it's going to be valuable for any of our listeners and viewers today. So thank you again. I know you got a meeting you have to get to, so we don't want to keep you any longer.
Well, appreciate it, guys. You guys doing a great job. I mean, it's viewership, everything. It's pretty awesome. I do listen to you guys a lot. So keep up the good work. Get after it. Tom, enjoy vacation, man.
Well, if you want to hide out, you know where to come.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, Mick. Appreciate you guys. Have a great one.
All right. Take care.
All right, Brad. Bye-bye. All right, before we continue our discussion, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, S&A Sports.
When you're talking about volleyball equipment, Collegiate 4000 is our benchmark, and it's our most popular system. At 22 and 27 pounds for the post weight, it's very easy to carry around. And I've seen middle schools as well as high school teams be able to set it up in under 5 minutes consistently. It uses our international net, which is a really unique net design. It doesn't slide back and forth on the top and bottom ropes. You actually hook the 4 points up, tighten everything up, and you're ready to play. Regardless of your sleeve size, whether they're 4-inch, 3.5, or 3-inch, we can modify our posts to fit that. They'll drop right in with a lifetime warranty on the post and a lifetime warranty on the winch. we're covering all of the real major components of the net system. We have infinite net height adjustability on the slide rail, from men's height all the way down to tennis if needed. And it's also infinitely upgradable. You don't really have to buy posts again. You can always just upgrade the rails and keep on going with whatever new technology we come out with. So if you're looking for a lightweight and versatile net system that's a snap to set up, I wouldn't look any further than the Collegiate. If you're interested, please give me a call. I'd love to talk with you.
Well, welcome back. I think we'll transition into our buzz reaction. It's going to be a little shorter today, but let me go ahead and start with Jim. How'd you feel like Brad answered the logistics of the Big Ten, since you've lived in the Big Ten for quite a while?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was dealing with a lot of unknowns, and that's expected when something new is getting going. The one thing about the Big Ten, having spent almost 30 years there, is they as a conference, they don't allow schools to do things randomly. There's some schools in the Big Ten that have financial challenges. In Northwestern, when he was speaking about Tim, Northwestern does, Rutgers does. My guess is the Big Ten, before the invitation was offered, is that, hey, we're all in this, and we have to do these financial things to support our programs. So I'd like to think that it'll be somewhat of a level playing field, but we'll see. It's there's going to be some challenges both for the West Coast schools, but for some of the middle to lower budgeted schools in the conference, back in the Midwest and East, there's going to be some challenges there as well.
Tom, how'd you think Brad did answering your portal questions?
I thought he did a nice job. And I think, he feels the same way that all of us do. And that, this is a trend that's taking us away from the lessons we're trying to teach as coaches and really putting a lot of power in the hands of the athlete. What I liked about Brad's answers and in the portal and recruiting stuff, as well as, just basically in trying to get people to be happy, he came across as someone who is very genuine and very authentic. And, I can see that he probably develops pretty good relationships and pretty good levels of trust with players, which in the long run does help your continuity. You know what I mean? So I didn't feel like he was throwing a bunch of BS at us in these answers. I thought he was really honestly talking the way he really believes.
Mick, you had questions about whether he believed what he was saying. Give you 1 minute to finish this up. Did Mick freeze on me?
I think he's frozen.
He is frozen.
I think he's frozen. Yeah,
that's something that we'll never see.
I know. We should take a picture of this. He can't get his mouth open to say anything. Well, I thought the same way you did, Tom. I thought he really was answering the questions, from his heart. And the NIL thing, I mean, I really would have liked him to answer a little bit more about the recruiting. That whole concept. When it switches like that. But I think he did believe the things he was saying, and I think he's moving in the right direction. Any other last-minute thoughts before we sign off?
Well, he's moving in the direction that he has to move. We can debate whether it's the right direction. But as a college coach, you just have to embrace the terrain, and if you're going to compete, you got to jump in and play the game.
Yeah, I remember in the days when we started recruiting kids earlier in their junior year and that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do this. This is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And now you don't know any other way of doing it. So he's right in that, you just got to take these challenges head on and make it part of what you do. And but at the same time, believe in who you are. Well,
you have it here, folks. A special thanks for all our listeners for tuning in. And until next time, this is Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz. Stay tuned for more volleyball excitement as we go into next week's session.